The galaxy knew her as Cryos, the eternal frost. She was a being of unimaginable power, her touch capable of freezing entire worlds, her presence a harbinger of icy doom. For eons, she drifted through the cosmos, a solitary force of nature, her heart as cold as the void she traversed. Civilizations trembled at her approach, for her touch was death, her gaze a sentence of eternal winter. She was a myth, a legend, a force beyond comprehension. But even legends can change. It began on a small, unremarkable planet called Erythea, a world teetering on the edge of collapse. Its sun was dying, its people desperate. Cryos arrived as she always did. Silent, inevitable, and merciless. The planet's atmosphere began to crystallize the moment her presence was felt. Frost spread across the surface, rivers turned to ice, and the once vibrant ecosystems fell into a deathly slumber. But amidst the chaos, there was one who did not flee. A human named Kael, an astronomer and philosopher, stood atop a frozen hill, his breath visible in the frigid air. He had spent his life studying the stars, dreaming of the mysteries they held. And now, as the embodiment of cosmic cold descended upon his world, he did not cower. Instead, he looked up, his eyes meeting hers. Cryos paused. No one had ever looked at her like this before. Furious. Desperation always. But this human's gaze was different. There was no fear in his eyes, only curiosity, and something else she could not name. It unsettled her, this strange warmth that seemed to radiate from him despite the cold. "Why do you not run?" she asked, her voice a whisper that carried the weight of glaciers. Kael smiled, a small, sad curve of his lips. "Where would I go? This is my home. And besides, I've always wanted to meet you." Cryos tilted her head, her crystalline hair shimmering like frozen starlight. "You wanted to meet me. Do you not know what I am?" "I do," Kael replied, his voice steady. "You are Cryos, the eternal frost. You bring winter to worlds. But I also know that winter is not the end. It's a season. Time of rest, of renewal. Without winter, there can be no spring." His words struck her like a comet. For the first time in eons, she felt something stir within her. A flicker of warmth, a spark of something she had long forgotten. She reached out, her hand hovering inches from his face. Frost spread across his skin, but he did not flinch. "You are strange," she murmured. "You do not fear me." "I don't," Kael said. "I pity you." Her hand froze midair. "Pity? Me?" "Yes," he said softly. "You've spent eternity alone, haven't you? Drifting from world to world, bringing cold and silence. But have you ever known warmth? Have you ever known love?" The word hung in the air between them, fragile and unfamiliar. Cryos withdrew her hand, her expression unreadable. "Love is a weakness," she said, though her voice lacked conviction. "Is it?" Kael asked. "Or is it the one thing that makes life worth living?" For a moment there was silence. Then, to her own astonishment, Cryos laughed, a sound like icicles shattering in the sun. "You are a fool," she said, but there was no malice in her words. "A brave, foolish human." Kael grinned. "Maybe. But I'd rather be a fool than live in fear." Days turned into weeks, and Cryos remained on Erythea. She did not freeze the planet completely. Instead, she lingered, drawn by the human who had dared to challenge her. Kael showed her his world, the frozen rivers that still flowed beneath the ice, the hardy plants that clung to life, the people who found warmth in each other despite the cold. He spoke to her of humanity, of their resilience, their capacity for love and hope. And slowly, something within her began to thaw. She found herself fascinated by him, by his unwavering optimism, his ability to see beauty in the bleakest of circumstances. He taught her to appreciate the delicate patterns of frost on a leaf, the way sunlight refracted through ice, the quiet serenity of a snow-covered landscape. For the first time, she saw winter not as an end, but as a beginning. One night, as they stood beneath a sky filled with stars, Kael turned to her. "You don't have to be alone anymore," he said. "You could stay with me." Cryos looked at him, her icy heart pounding in a way it never had before. "I am not like you," she said. "I am not human. I am a force of nature." "And yet," Kael said, taking her hand in his, "you feel. Isn't that what matters?" Her hand trembled in his, the frost melting away at his touch. For the first time she felt warmth, real, undeniable warmth. It spread through her, thawing the ice that had encased her heart for so long. Tears, actual liquid tears, streamed down her face, freezing into delicate crystals as they fell. I don't know how to do this," she whispered. "Neither do I," Kael admitted. "But we can figure it out together." Years passed, and Erythea began to heal. The sun, though still weak, grew stronger, its rays piercing through the icy veil that had shrouded the planet. Life returned slowly but surely, and the people of Erythea came to see Cryos not as a destroyer, but as a protector. She used her power to shield the planet from cosmic storms, to preserve its fragile ecosystems, to ensure its survival. And Kael. He remained by her side, a constant reminder of the warmth she had found within herself. Together they built a life. A strange, beautiful life that defied the laws of nature and the expectations of the universe. But even the strongest bonds can be tested. One day, a fleet of alien ships arrived, their intentions clear. They had come to conquer Erythea, to strip it of its resources and enslave its people. Cryos prepared to defend the planet, her power surging like a blizzard. But Kael stopped her. "Let me talk to them," he said. "There has to be another way." "They will not listen," Cryos warned. "They will see your kindness as weakness." "Maybe," Kael said. "But I have to try." Reluctantly, Cryos agreed. Kael approached the alien fleet, his hands raised in peace. He spoke to them of Erythea's beauty, of its resilience, of the lessons he had learned from Cryos. He spoke of love, of hope, of the possibility of coexistence. And to everyone's astonishment, the aliens listened. They saw not a weak human, but a being of immense courage and compassion. They saw Cryos not as a monster but as a guardian. And they saw Erythea, not as a prize to be won, but as a treasure to be cherished. The fleet departed, leaving the planet in peace. In the end, Cryos learned that her power was not just to destroy, but to protect. She learned that even the coldest heart can be warmed by love. And Kael. He learned that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope. Together they became a legend, not of fear but of love. A story told across the galaxy, of how one human's gaze thawed the heart of the eternal frost. And as they stood together beneath the stars, hand in hand, they knew that their story was just beginning.